Hello and welcome. Firstly, I must start with a brief apology if some of you have been waiting for us. We are starting just a few minutes late, so please accept my apologies for that. Wherever you are in the world, thank you for joining me here live in the metaverse for November's Genius Metaversity Masterclass. The title of today's masterclass is Unlocking Online Course Success, Transforming Knowledge into Profitable Results. Roger's special guest today is the $100 million webinar man, Jason Fladlien. Now, as you know, I don't give a huge introduction here because I know Roger has a wonderful introduction for Jason ready. So if you are all ready, if we're all live here in the metaverse and everything is as it should be, I'm ready to hand over to Roger. So I hope you really, really enjoy today's masterclass and get everything out of this wonderful hour that's coming for you. Over to you, Roger.
Hi, everyone. It's Roger Hamilton with a very, very exciting Metaversity meet that we're going to be having today with Jason Fladlien. Hey, Jason, how are you?
Roger, it's great to be back with you, my friend.
Yeah, this is very good. We're both stateside this time around. I'm in California. Do you want to share with everyone where you're at and also the main things you're focusing at right now? And then I'll go into more of a bit of a bio as we jump into our session.
Sure, I'm in Los Angeles, and oh my God, what am I focusing on? I'm just trying to make the boat go faster. Yeah, I don't know if you know that story, but they were trying to win a gold medal, a rowing team was, and then they said, if it doesn't make the boat go faster, we don't do it. So I'm still ruthlessly pruning the tree of good but not great techniques to try to continue to stay in that zone of genius that is so elusive.
That's super interesting. It's funny. I was in Bali for our big event we just ran, our master's event, and I was sharing my experience rowing, like talking about making the boat go faster. I was the captain of the boat club at Trinity in Cambridge University, where we had like probably half the entire college was basically like rowing every single morning. And always when we had the new, what we'd call the novices, right? The people that were just learning to come in. And the biggest challenge they would always have when they got in the boat was trying to balance the boat, because obviously it's a very thin boat and you're trying to like slide up and down while you're trying to get your blades in and out of the water. And so the whole thing was like, well, how do we balance the boat? And the best coaches would basically get the novices out of the boat and say, just have a look at the boat when the humans aren't in it. Is it balanced? It's like, yeah, actually it is, right? So the whole thing around basically how do we get the boat to go faster? Mostly it's ourselves that are in the way, right? And it's like, how do we actually shift and change that, especially in this age of AI right now as well?
That's a great segue and setup, right? So I'm ready for you to steer the boat wherever you want to go, Roger. I'll be happy.
Very nice. Okay, well, let me share with everyone a little bit about the context of our current plans going forward and where this conversation with Jason is going to link into all of this. We're going to be sharing with everyone a little bit about how at Genius U, we are evolving the entire Genius Metaversity, which is our mastermind group, how this is basically bringing all of the very latest in the new renaissance, which is what's happening in the age of AI, and how that's impacting the way that we all are seeing things moving forward as well. I want to give a little bit of an intro into Jason, and then at the same time, basically put it in the context of what we're doing right now, and what we're seeing shift in the markets right now as well. So Jason's whole background, $100 million webinar man. He was there at the very, very beginning of when people started finding that going out there and connecting to people through webinars, through basically, online digital engagement at the very beginning, basically was there doing $1 million webinars, and has seen this evolve over time, done over $250 million worth of product sales, 150,000 customers in 131 countries. And you can see here, just talking about some of the biggest projects that have taken place. And also at the same time, Rapid Crush, his own platform that he's actually built over time as well. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. I want to put it in context before we go into the slides and things we're sharing to where we are right now in terms of the growth of our entire platform. This next year, we're expecting to go from somewhere around 6 million students to more like 10 million students. I have my own book, Genius Generation, that's going to be coming out which is about what's happening in this world of AI, where people are losing trust. We're seeing this across everything. And often the easiest way to build trust is to divide yourself from those that you actually don't agree with. And we're seeing this in social media. We're seeing this in general media. So if we grow divided by our differences, well, that's in the wrong direction. But if we become united by uniqueness, that's the total opposite, right? So what does that actually look like? I know many of you are following me in terms of my list on Twitter. Sam Altman posted this and I bookmarked it just yesterday. He says, generally, the highest ROI comes from getting even better in areas where you're already strong, not improving in areas where you're weak. There are important exceptions, but most people focus on their weaknesses too much. So you want to be world-class at some narrow and important intersection, not decently good at a lot of things. So another way to put that is to ignite your genius, right? How do you actually just make sure that you are trusting, if you're going to trust anything, yourself more than anything else? And how do you do that if you're in a marketing and a sales process going forward as well, right? There's another part to this as well, which I'm going to share, which is that we have got a series of masterclasses and also micro schools are running around AI entrepreneurship. This is a perfect example. The resident AI expert we have is Suraj Naik. He has been with us since day one of Genius U. He put this together over a weekend, right? So basically, he's doing an MIT course right now on AI. He put this together, student AI, where basically you are able to come in and pick your AI. All these people down here, they're all AIs, right? So whether it's James Copper, who's a research assistant, whether you've got Susan, who's an online language tutor. So you choose whoever your tutors are going to be, whoever you're going to have support you, and then they get to learn who you are, where you're at, and you're basically having conversations and going through whether it's your studies, whether it's putting your reports together, but where you've got not one AI, but multiple AIs, each of which has got their own specific area where the ability to personalize, and then from that personalization, every single person is going to be able to do whatever they want in a way that is right for them. The days of one-size-fits-all email newsletters, the days of us trying to get everyone basically to be hearing the same message when everyone already is personalized and different, those days are upon us, like they're here right now. And by the way, these tools are the tools that we're going to be sharing on our upcoming masterclasses so that anyone can be actually building these kind of tools for yourself as well. So with all of that as a bit of a intro, with a final piece, which is that we have our Global Entrepreneur Summit, which is all about exponential entrepreneurs in the age of AI. This is all happening over this month, right? You can see this is happening later, either live in London or actually coming to our summits as well. And that kind of brings me all the way full circle back to Jason, because basically, Jason, what we're seeing on our side is that the way that people are wanting to engage and what they're actually responding to post-pandemic continues to change pretty dramatically. I'd love for you to share with everyone what you see as the biggest shifts that are currently taking place, and how you're going about advising your clients on the best way to be building engagement today with all these changes taking place.
Yeah, it's a great question. Everybody's trying to predict the future. And I found that to be a very dangerous position to take. I prefer the Warren Buffett school of investing and how he predicts the future. He finds really great, amazing things, and then he's extremely patient with them, and he allows them to compound over time. So a good use case of this is recently, ChatGPT just completely put a whole bunch of these AI wrappers out of business. So people that were hooking into like the API and building their own thing on top of OpenAI, you were lucky if you didn't get hit by some stray bullets during their recent update, and they will do those things again. So that's risky and dangerous if you think, okay, I can see the opportunity here and I'm going to build my own thing on top of it, not knowing that the person who's the leader in the market right now is already 15 steps ahead of you. And you just got to somehow hope, even if you got the greatest idea, that you won't be cannibalized by a bigger cannibal than you and that you'll lose out on the market. So generally, Roger, in the 16 years I've been in business, which in internet years is like 150 million, it's forever. And I've seen a lot of cycles go through in the e-commerce space. Generally, we're not in a predictive future phase. Generally, we're in the take advantage of the present phase. So people are trying to figure out the tools that they can use today and the approaches and tactics and strategies that work right now that they can apply. So it's always exciting to me when I see people throw all of that out and try to bet on speculative things, because then it opens up the channel where the tactics and the strategies and the fundamentals become overly valued in the marketplace. They're at a higher value than they were previous. Even if you were just as good as you were yesterday, if you can point it at the right market, you get a outsized return on your skill set, if you will. So I find this exciting, Roger, because for me, and this isn't going to be applicable to everybody starting out, and we'll talk about that here in a second, is while everybody's getting quote unquote distracted, you could argue whether it's a distraction or not, but they're not doing the thing they normally do because they're spending all night reading through, you know, chat logs and AIs, and they're following all these people on Twitter. They're not doing the reps like they normally do the reps. And so my skill set has seen an increase in value because of that. Now, long term, if I'm not overly invested in AI myself, I could become irrelevant, just like anybody can become irrelevant. It doesn't matter how big you are. If you don't adapt, you die. So you got to have some of that. But I'm finding for now, at least in the short term, refocusing on the human element of the business is getting me a better return than it normally will because of the fact everybody is going down a lot of dead ends right now, feeling in the dark for the light switch, trying to figure out which AI pony to back. So that's kind of cool. I like that.
Now, if I can I dig in a little bit to?
Yeah, let's dig in because I want to flip it back to, well, what if you're a beginner? What should you do, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So if I can just share a couple of things to put context of what you're talking about around when you're talking about bringing the human element in and what the different elements are that people should be focusing at, right? Like one of the things that we're known for is the fact that we always start by asking people about themselves, right? So we'll start an assessment of some sort, whether it's about their passions or their purpose or their talents. And that's really why it's called, you know, basically the genius test, where people will always start by finding out about themselves. And then once they find out about themselves, we're using AI with their Genie AI to then guide them on learning how to take their own personalized pathway. And then it then leads into our Genius journey, which always starts with one of a number of things that frankly are free, right? So like webinars are in there. We call our webinars masterclasses, or an actual like experience they're going through, which is AI driven, like, you know, a test of some sort, but it's always from the point of view of how can someone solve a problem that they've actually got, and then see that they can actually get that solved more effectively with us than with others. And if that's the case, then of course they're going to come and start, you know, buying things from us. And if we're not doing a good job of that, well, we know it because they're not going to be buying from us. So there's an aspect to this we've seen over time, the way that someone puts a message together and then the way they go about presenting that message, whether it's a, you know, 60-minute webinar or whether it is basically, you know, a 10-minute call, that is shifting in terms of effectiveness. So I'd love for you to speak towards what you're talking about, which is like the basics of just getting back to what people actually are needing in order for them to feel trust, and then the right format that you're seeing work today.
Yeah, that's a great way to look at it. So the way we're using AI most effectively is not internally, it's equipping customers who are just getting started to get over some very basic hurdles, but they're the hurdles that stop them from moving forward. And at a highest level possible, Roger, a lot of people struggle with this idea of I can choose what to do without any outside affirmation, without any other credentialization or somebody giving me permission to do that. The human experience is typically coded that we need permission from an authority to move forward on something. Now, crazy people like you and me, we don't. We are the opposite of that. Like if somebody tells me to do something, I don't want to do it. I've always wanted to do things on my own and figure that out, but I realize I'm alien. The market prefers somebody else tell them what to do, and they feel very comfortable if somebody of authority who they trust and they like tells them what to do. And so let's look at that. If AI can tell you what to do, and that gets you moving in the general right direction, to me, that's good enough. Because one of the things about the entrepreneurial journey that people don't quite understand is it's easier to make decisions right than it is to make the right decisions. All the biggest campaigns I ever had in my life started out mediocre. I tried something and I was kind of right in some ways, but wrong in many ways. But I could observe the feedback from the marketplace and make adjustments. The biggest breakthroughs ever are going to occur that way. And so if AI can get you from ideation to implementation sooner, then I'm all for it. And we're seeing that a lot with clients. We're saying, okay, listen, so like we have this e-com thing that we're selling right now. We're partnering with an e-com company, and I get on a webinar and teach people. Part of this launching their own e-com brand is they have to come up with color schemes. They have to come up with a name, a logo, and a tagline. The average person, if you leave them to their own devices and do it the old way, where they'd go out to a marketplace and outsource that kind of stuff, they never get it done, unfortunately. We can get them to get it done in AI in almost a day or two. Is it world-class? No, but it doesn't need to be world-class. If you look at some of the greatest brands over time, how they started to how they evolved from a look and a feel and an iconography standpoint, they evolve just like anything does. So we just got to get people going in the general right direction. And I love that about AI, provided you don't get distracted by its very bright, shiny accoutrements. And then, that's just another form of an excuse. So we're arming clients with AI in a way that gets speed of implementation to increase without a decrease in quality. In fact, oftentimes there's a marginal increase in quality for a beginner because they're not even good enough to know what average is. And so if we can, AI will outpace them in a lot of categories from a quality perspective when they're starting out. So it's faster and it's marginally better. And that's exciting. We can help customers succeed sooner as a result.
Yeah, I want to jump into a very interesting conversation I had recently with Joe Stolt, who set up Daily AI. And we're now partnering with Daily AI because the results they're getting are just ridiculous, right? They're up to 40, 60% email open rates. Click-through rates are also massively up. And of course, for most people that are actually out there trying to engage through email, of course, they've seen like things go down further and further. So it's like, well, how is it possible that they're actually getting such high open rates? And the way Joe explains it is really funny. He's like, well, the problem is most people only get to kind of like first base when they're planning out their emails. And if they're lucky to get to second base, by going, getting third base is a whole different thing because it's about understanding what these 3 steps are, right? He says step number 1 is what most people do is they basically give their customers what they think their customer wants, right? Which is never what the customer really wants, right? So basically, the first thing they do is say, okay, let's put your own AI newsletter together where, you pick the topics, choose the thinkers, select sources. So this is where, and we went through this process where, this is what we think our audience wants, right? And he goes, that's probably 10% of getting there, right? Which means you've left 90% on the table. The second thing is you then go to the audience to find out what the audience thinks the audience wants, right? And what the audience thinks they want is also not what they actually want. But you can actually still be asking them, hey, would you like to see more of this, more of that? And AI can then start delivering it. But the real thing that happens, the third step, is when you actually figure out what the audience really wants, right? And of course, you can only know that by seeing what they click on, what they're actually spending more time on. And so that's the optimization side, which generally as human beings, we don't test and measure enough. We kind of like think we've already got it figured out. But if AI is doing this constantly every single time they're sending it out, then it's just optimizing. And then you're effectively getting to something much, much, much closer to what someone really wants off the back of it. And so that whole idea that most people don't even know what they want, I really like these 11 sales commandments here, and I'd love for us to go through some of them. Like even this very first one, most of your best customers are hyper-resistant to the very products that could have the biggest impacts on their lives. Could you speak to that for a bit, just your experience of that in terms of how do you get people what they really want?
Yeah, the hardest nuts to crack bear the sweetest fruit. We see that oftentimes in business. Unfortunately, our clients look at that and say, oh, those are difficult people. They're not qualified. They don't buy, so let's ignore them. But if they're harder to win on the front end, they're easier to win on the back end. Now, if you think about it, if we're selling knick-knacky kind of stuff, who cares? It doesn't matter, right? But if we're selling life-changing kind of stuff, which you and I are, Roger, it matters very greatly. And so what I've discovered is people are more scared of success than they are of failure. Failure is something that they know, unfortunately, and they can have at least some familiarity with it. Success to them is an open-ended idea of anything and everything, which is scary because of how large it is as a possibility to think through. And so what happens, though, is when you're out there selling something that is really of quality, let's assume it's of quality, and you give up on somebody right away because they're resistant to it. And then you use the excuse, well, I don't want to be pushy. I don't want to annoy people or, whatever. You probably lose your very best customers because they're the customers that want to drown. And the first time you put your hand out there to pull them up, they kick it away. They want to die, and you don't give up on them. And because you're the only one that doesn't give up on them, they end up loving you because you saved them. And not only do they buy more from you at higher prices, they tell more people about you. And then some of them become your best business partners and affiliates and certain, integrators and channels later on. And so the idea here is, I think everybody should sell more than how they sell now, because the best customers are the ones that you're giving up on right now, which is unfortunate for both of you.
And so let's talk about that. The people who are the toughest or maybe the most skeptical to begin with, right? The ones that might have subscribed for some product or something, or even come along to a webinar. What's your recommendation for how people go about looking after those people, or get information from them that they're willing to give, so that you can build that trust?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I always think about it as like you have a toolbox with a bunch of tools in it. And maybe objectively, tool A has proven to be the most efficient, most efficacious tool in your toolkit. So most people are like, well, this is the very best thing. So they apply it, they use it, and then it works, but it doesn't work all the time. And then people give up. They're like, okay, yeah, it's the best tool, so we better not use any other tools. And I'm kind of like, well, let's use tool B on the rest of the audience that tool A didn't work for. And then some of them will say yes, but not all of them. And then we'll use tool C, tool D, tool E, tool F. And I want them to give up on me before I ever give up on them. That's my attitude. And so we're running through. So AI, by the way, opens up a whole bunch of new tools in the toolkit that you can utilize for that process. But the fundamental belief that I have is that we give up on the people far too easy. The people that can't meditate for 10 minutes need to meditate for an hour, right? So the people that give you the excuse that they can't afford it are the ones that need it the most, are the ones that are in the tightest financial position if you're selling financial products, for example. Those are the hardest nuts to crack. And so, even though webinar is my best tool in the toolkit, that doesn't mean I only ever do webinars, or that I don't think other media is also important. We'll use any and everything at our disposal that we can to help the person that is in need of helping. And I think a lot of people don't look at it like that. They look at it from a me-centric point of view. I tried this, I put this effort in, I succeeded or I failed. And I try to look at it from the customer point of view. They're still hurting. They're still struggling. What haven't they heard yet that if they heard it would help them make a better decision?
This idea of not giving up on the customer, right? Like, because of course, for most people, there is this aspect also, which is, okay, well, at what point am I expecting something from the customer, right? Like you say, number two, and I'm not going to go through all of these, but I'm going to go through the ones I think are really relevant right now. You can't say you care about your customers and then give up easily, but also it's much harder to help someone who doesn't spend money with you. So does it make a difference whether they're spending $1 or spending $100? And how do you go about advising your clients to segment people based on how much they have spent with you, or where they're at in that whole spectrum?
That's a great question. So it doesn't matter if they spend a penny, $1, or $1 million with you. There's something psychologically that occurs when somebody's not your customer yet. They won't want to listen to a 1-minute TikTok video of you. They have that so-called goldfish attention span. But if you get them to pay you $1 for a training you're doing on Friday, they'll listen for 4 hours straight and then be disappointed that there's not 4 more hours, because the person now has an identity shift. They go from, I don't know you and I don't trust you and you're not important to me, to, well, I'm a customer of yours now. And so it would be inconsistent for me to give you money and not trust you. So therefore, I'm committed to you and I'm consistent in that behavior as a result of that. And so for a short period of time, you don't get them forever. They are temporarily in a state where they are ravenous to consume as much from you as you possibly can give them. And that's why, 2 and 3 work really well together, where you can't say you care and then give up too easily on the customer. One of those things only can be true, not both of them. And so your customer will see that. If you don't push, they'll take that as you don't care about them. Some of them will be annoyed when you push, but I'd rather them be annoyed and then show the people I care than have people think I don't care. And then getting them to pay money to you, they will be more in tune to you. And if you truly have something that's better to offer than the next person, you kind of owe it to them, because otherwise you're going to let them get the B, C, D, and F tier advice instead of your advice. So we want to get people engaged for 2 reasons. 1, so they can focus on us, and 2, so they can't focus on anybody else. So it's really important to sell them something.
So what does that look like? Can you give like a case study or an example where someone might have had, a product that frankly people want, but because they weren't trying hard enough, or because they hadn't really thought through like the perseverance needed, or even like the structure, and how you might have changed that in terms of, pricing structure or what was being offered on webinars, etc., and then got
I got a
result.
couple cases that follow this exact model. So I had a product that was selling for $500, and we would sell it for a general webinar, and we'd get a huge chunk of the market like that. But it had a life cycle to it. And certain people just didn't buy through that type of modality. So what we did, Roger, is on a follow-up, we sold an offer that went like this. It said $25 or $250. Whether you pay for either, you're going to get the exact same information. So what we did is we took one aspect of that $500 course and we enlarged it. So generally a webinar is going to be about an hour, hour and a half of content. But a coaching webinar versus a sales webinar can be different. So we're like, man, we can train on this thing for 3 or 4 hours and then make an offer at the end of it. But they got to pay for it because nobody else is going to want to hang out on a 3-hour webinar. That's a training webinar unless they pay for it. So we make this A/B offer. We follow up to the people who haven't bought, and we say, hey, on Friday, I'm doing this live. If you come and you show up and you stay for the whole thing, I'll give you the recordings for free. Just pay $25. However, if you don't show up, if you don't stay for the whole time, and we'll track this, then you don't get the recording. Now, if you know you're not going to show up, pay us $250. Or if you show up and miss it, you can pay us $250 later. But your choice, same content, go ahead and decide what you want. So 94% of people typically will take the $25 offer. 6% surprisingly will take the $250. I don't want them. I want everybody to show up and stay and pay attention. And then I can train them for 3 hours. So a webinar, a sales webinar generally doesn't do a lot of training. It does a lot of behavioral shifting, which is very important, more important than training, by the way. But then the follow-up, the training webinar focuses on a different segment and it has a different price point. And then at the end of that, we sell the $500 thing again. And the people that didn't buy the $500 thing the first time through, a large chunk of them now buy the $500 thing the second time through, just because we put something in front of it. And that can change the whole responsiveness of that secondary market that otherwise, I mean, anything's better than nothing. Even if we can get some of them to buy, that's better than getting none of them to buy. And so that's right. Another method that we can take to get the audience re-engaged. So I'm always thinking, if A didn't work, right, this is that toolkit example, A in the toolkit didn't work, let's follow up with B. And it's easier to do that with one product than to write 2 separate webinars for 2 separate products.
Got it. I got it. And okay, so that's a great example of where just by shifting the offer or even the pricing and providing more micro steps that people can take, that can really like help the process. Let's talk about micro steps a little bit more as well, because there's definitely been an observation that I have seen with quite a number of digital marketers and those that have been thinking how to get the same kind of responsiveness that used to happen, 10 years ago when there wasn't so much noise in the market. And one of them is definitely that the number of touch points that you should expect to have to go through to earn the trust of a customer, and the entry point of where a customer goes, okay, I'm willing to give this a go, right? Which actually is dropping in terms of price point. That all of these things, you argue, means that someone has to put a lot more effort in order to actually get to the same revenue point, right? Because, you've got to get to a lot more people a lot more often at a low price to get to the same place. However, at the same time, it's also true that at the other end, if you give people a way that you can do it for them, a good example is someone like, Mike was saying, who we're working with for our whole Groove digital partnership. He before was like, hey, I'm selling a $25,000 program, which is my mentoring program, and people can come join it, et cetera, et cetera. And that's pretty standard in the US that people do that. And before it was quite easy for him to fill that up. And suddenly it's like, wow, like it's more difficult because there's so many $25,000 programs out there. But when he said, you know what, we're going to actually up the value of what we're giving there, because we're going to be giving you a team that's going to implement X, Y, Z. We're going to do it for you, as well as you getting the mentoring. Then suddenly he was getting people calling him saying, I want to book up. I want to be part of that. Right. And the desire of people to actually pay more money, less people, but paying more money meant overall you could make up for what was happening on the multiply side with the magnify side. Could you speak to that in terms of how you're, seeing maybe potentially the same thing or maybe different, and any case studies you have where you've seen that shift as well in terms of pricing up as well as down?
So first thing is, basic economics, supply and demand. It's true there's more supply in terms of sellers in the marketplace, but I would argue there's even more demand. So supply has grown, but demand has grown even higher. And so I'm finding it's better to be in business today than it was when I started, certainly, and even 5 or 10 years ago. It's different. Different doesn't mean worse. Different doesn't mean harder. It just means it's different. So to people that are committed to, I only do it this way because I've learned how to do it this way, and I don't want to learn how to do it any other way. Yeah, it's harder. You'll be embarrassed repeatedly in the marketplace. But we just have to make some simple adjustments. And if we do, the payoff is bigger. The number of coaching clients that I have, Roger, who far exceeded my success, even though I started 10 years earlier than them, is vast because they could stand on the shoulders of us as giants. And the marketplace is so much bigger. I couldn't post content on YouTube when I started. They didn't allow marketing content of any kind or business education of any kind. They just wanted cat videos. And then nowadays, people can get millions of reach just like that. You couldn't advertise on Facebook when I started. And now you can reach people in all different countries. They're now launching these little digital marketing boutique things and killing it in those countries. So I think the opportunity is actually better than it was, and I don't think it's necessarily harder. It's just different, which is always business. It's the innovation that wins the game at the end of the day. Now, to your point, there's the 80-20 rule, that constant gravity of business, and in one application of it, it's 20% of customers spend 80% of the money. So I try to focus on those 20%, and they are just as easy to reach. They're just as easy to sell. But they're far more lucrative. They're 4 times more valuable than the rest of the market segment is. So I like to build models that cater to them first. I call it the Robin Hood method. So, steal from the rich and give to the poor. We're not stealing in this instance, but if I can work with the super elite rich who just want it 4 hours sooner and will pay 4 times as much to get it, we can test products out in that market segment, give them the minimum viable version of it, and then take a lot of the money that they pay us for that and reinvest that back in to build out the mass market version of that product and sell that. We had an offer once where we sold it initially for $10,000, and it included a lot of one-on-one. And that allowed us to iron out the processes. Where were the difficulties we anticipated over here, but it ends up being over here? What do people resonate with the most? And we told the audience, we're like, we're going to get this to everybody, but it's going to take us about 6 months. But for those of you who are in a good capital position right now, you can get started today and you can be our guinea pigs. And they paid $10,000 for that. We then ironed out that process and sold it to the marketplace for $2,500. And both people thought they got a really good deal. The people that paid $10,000 were happy that they got it first and got a lot of hand-holding. The people that paid $2,500 were happy because there was a members area and a curriculum that was well-defined and that was beta tested and optimized, and it had handouts and it had all sorts of other paraphernalia that would help that person, and they got an unbelievable deal. So you can serve both markets, but I typically try to do one or the other. Now, if you're starting out, it's kind of the flip. So if you go to Amazon, they have 2 ways you can sort for products: highest to lowest or lowest to highest. First of all, people forget highest to lowest. So that proves the point that we're talking about. There's no middle up, middle down option, either the highest or the lowest. So I think an incredibly low price point when you're starting out is a huge advantage because you're a rowboat against a battleship. So a battleship you want to go to war with, but if you need to get it out of there and you need to make a quick change, you want to be in a rowboat. Because battleships can't change course very quickly. So the bigger players in the market are neglecting these micro segments that are very lucrative if somebody caters to them specifically. And so if you can get into that market, and that's what I did when I started selling really, really, really ridiculously cheap solutions, then you get the trust of that market very quickly. And it's like a snowflake that causes an avalanche. It just compounds and it compounds and it compounds. And then you wake up one day and you're the market leader. So I think it's really good if you're starting off to look at that. Who's being neglected? Because other people think it's not worth their time to focus on that audience. And you should focus on that audience, but you should lead with a price point. Because it's very hard to discern who's a buyer and who's not. And the easiest way to discern it is put an offer in front of them and see who buys.
Yes. Yeah. That's super interesting. There's an aspect to the way you're talking about what people really want to buy, and in that case, someone's willing to pay a premium fundamentally to get it first, right? Like, they get it before the rest of the market, right? And exclusivity is another way. Another way which is working really well that I see right now is ROI, in terms of, look, if I am going to spend 2,000, what can I make out of it? So, for example, one of our partners, Salim Ismail, who runs exponential organizations, he has basically 3 tiers, where on the 1 tier he has a SaaS model, which is membership, which is very low price. It's like a couple $100 and you can be a member for the whole year, and then you've got a great community. So, like you say, you're going out with something which is very low price, and if you can make that pay for all your overheads, great, right? You've got a great business that's of recurring revenue. But when they come on board, what they're seeing is that on the other end, he has got these $500,000 sprints with the biggest companies in the world, where he basically goes in for like 3 months and he's showing them how much they can transform their entire business if they use the tools that he has in his exponential organization toolbox. And so he's got these companies coming on board. But of course, to do those $500,000 deals, he needs to have trainers. And so what happens to the members who come on board is that they have an opportunity to be certified as trainers, where they'll spend $2,000 or $4,000 to be trained at different levels. And then he'll pick the best trainers, and they then get the ability to then deliver and earn from these big sprints that get run. And so effectively, he then has these 3 different pathways. But it was because he had something at the high level, which made the people coming on board saying, hey, I can actually earn money because I can see exactly where that money's being made within the market as well. When you're doing, the pathways, are you seeing often that the people that are the customers who are paying the money also are being given opportunities to become the partners, whether it's certified trainers or affiliates or so on, within that same spectrum as well?
That's our favorite model. And that's how we've really grown our business super quickly. We don't spend money on advertising. It's all referral, it's all affiliate based, or it's all taking customers and having them become what I call integrators, where we integrate into their ecosystem, they integrate into our ecosystem. People will push back on that and they'll say, well, I'm in the weight loss business, I can't do it in that business. I'm like, okay, whatever. 70% of the US population is overweight. So I think everybody that you're going to sell to, there's a 7 out of 10 chance in a random sample that they have somebody that they can help. What we've discovered, Roger, is, and we discovered this way back in the day, we had a coaching program come up by accident. So we were some of the first people to teach people how to sell on Amazon. And what we discovered is, while some people like to run Amazon businesses and they could make good money running Amazon business, they would rather take a pay cut and help others run Amazon businesses, because the non-numerical value of contribution to somebody else was higher to them than the money that they would lose as a result. Now, some people like the steady paycheck too. If I can just keep feeding you customers and you can show up and make $140 every time you talk to this customer, that's better than maybe making $280 every time you sell on Amazon. So we find that there's always a percentage of the market that loves to coach, is good at it, and they come in and they're trained because they've been a customer. So they're the best people to help customers. And so we're always looking for that edge. That's what we're doing right now. I just redid my latest webinar training. Almost killed myself. Finally, it's done again. I put it off for 6 years, but we just went and recorded the new webinar training that I'm doing. But that whole model is, we're going to sell that on the front end for $1,000. On the back end of that, we're going to put into a coaching program that's initially going to be like $8,000 just to get it off the ground. But then we're going to find the people who take that program, and some of them are going to become coaches. And then those coaches are going to come in, and we're going to be able to charge a lot more because the value is going to be higher, because we're going to have 5 coaches that can support a person. Tiger Woods didn't have just one coach when he played in golf. He had a coach for everything. He had a coach that just watched his wrists, and he had a coach that just watched where his head was when he swung. We want to have coaching like that. So we'll get him out of there. They'll get paid out of the results that come in. But here's the thing, Roger, that is the most important thing. The easiest way to grow any program is the following. And this is what we're always trying to do. Somebody's success, marketing success of the students is the easiest way to grow any program. So if you're starting out and you're selling for a low price point, the most valuable thing you could ever get is the testimonial that results in that. And they will tell other people, even if you tell them not to, because they'll be so overjoyed that you gave them that result. Even if they don't tell other people, you can case study what they did and use that as collateral. Who wants to be my next case study? We just had this happen. And then the ultimate position, if you're designing a coaching program, which is what we're looking for here, is pure publishing of all the data. We had 49 people go through this program, right? 28 people were able to achieve X. Now 21 people did nothing. So, we had a program, 49 people went through it, 21 people did nothing. The other 28 or whatever it is did X. Some did Y, some did Z, some did A, some did B, some did Z. Here was the average overall result. I'll just publish the whole data set. That's what we try to always accomplish in these programs. The best marketing is that type of marketing, because you never see it, because the success rates in these programs are very low. And so if you saw the numbers without understanding them, you would never buy anything ever. I don't, and I think that's fair, by the way, because the average business is going to fail. I think a 3% success rate in a coaching business at mass is actually really good. A lot of people think that's really negative. Oh, 97% of people failed. Yeah, well, 3 people succeeded. I think that's incredible. And by the way, how do we measure success and failure? If you now have hope where you didn't have hope before, and tomorrow's better than today, yeah, we can't point out, a financial result or a concrete specific reduction of weight or whatever the case is, but we've increased that person's emotional well-being, and I think most people find out that they're happy, and that's why they can't keep coming back. And by the way, if it's the next step in the journey, if it gets you one step closer, so then the next thing you do is successful, you remove that, it all falls apart. So this is why it's hard to market. Because we got to we have abstract results that we have to communicate, not concrete ones. But if we have concrete ones, all the better.
Yeah. I mean, to that point here, right? Like this one here, don't put down, create an environment for others to rise to the occasion. We just ran the event we just had, which we do in all of our events. We basically make sure, number one, that that this is the one that we had just now in Bali. We had a big Halloween party and so on, and the whole thing was basically about, how do you go about building a business? Like, this was at a beach club that we had, and people from all over the world. And in the week, everyone was putting their business plans together, and then there was a big competition at the end. And of course, the winners, right? Everyone was voting for who the winners were and everything. Everyone was part of the whole process. You can only have one winner, but the fact is, everyone's slides that they put together, their decks, it all became open source, that everyone got to share in the success of those that were the best, right? And the reason this is so important, right? And when you get people together, it creates a whole different energy from people online, and people online go, I want to be part of that whole process as well. I mentioned that we have the summit coming up. I do have a question around environment, and to what extent online, to what extent, in person. We're doing ours as a hybrid, right? So basically, people can either come to London, or they can actually go to one of our satellite events. So we have a satellite events in places like South Africa or in Madrid, like all different places that we're running them. And then we have got virtual, where you can just be at home and actually be part of it as well. What's been your experience of hybrid events, and how's that evolved post-pandemic time?
Yeah, hybrid events are tricky. If you can pull them off, you get the best of both worlds. But they increase the complexity, therefore increasing the chances that it goes wrong. So you got to be a black belt, which I know you are, Roger, right? It's kind of like you get good at one, which is either the virtual version or the in-person one, and then you start to add in the other. Ideally, you get good at both separately, and then you start to combine them both together. And then you anticipate and expect that these additional variables are going to make it more complicated. And if you struggle at first and make mistakes, that's okay. That's how a baby learns to walk, if you can pull them off, it's the greatest thing ever. What you don't want is people that should be there live copying out and going to virtual. And people will have that tendency, the path of least resistance, and it's easy to excuse it. Nobody really wants to get on a plane, fly halfway across the world, spend money on that ticket, spend money in a hotel room, meet a whole bunch of strangers, and a lot of people, they're more introverted these days than they ever have been, so it's even more uncomfortable with the social anxiety and all this other stuff that's going on. Nobody really wants to do that, so the payoff and the reward of doing that has to be so great that it transcends that initial resistance. But if there's the opportunity to go virtually, they might say, well, I'm still doing it, but not really. So you got to be careful on how you market that in order to reach both of those audiences. It's possible. You can certainly do it. And we've seen that done before, but you got to acknowledge that. And Roger, this is something I see a lot of people don't do in businesses. They don't acknowledge the realities of the challenges that they face. And I get why. People are generally of one of two sides of the spectrum. They're either, if I pretend these problems don't exist, then I don't psych myself out and I take bold action. And then they get results. And that can be effective. It's dangerous, but it can be effective. And then other people are like, I'm all too aware of the keen realities of how this could not work. So therefore, I'm overwhelmed by all the ways it can't work, because there's more ways it can't work than can work. And so therefore, they do nothing. But within the ends of the spectrum, there's a whole juicy fat middle, which is like, how can we test things out? How can we make safe bets but still move forward? And then once we learn those things, then we can grow on that. That's why having a live event, I mean, the easiest way to sell a live event is what you're doing. Have a whole gigantic universe of customers that you could reach. And then only a small percentage of those customers can be in person because of the logistical limitations of the event space. And when there's supply and demand like that, the scarcity is so strong that people will overcome these normal excuses that would hold them back. And then the marketing has to be precise enough to call out those people then, because now you can sell something to somebody who doesn't necessarily need to buy it because the scarcity is so compelling. It's like the joke I always tell: the wife comes home and with a whole box of stuff from the shopping mall trip. And the husband says, "Why did you buy that?" And she says, "It was 80% off." And he goes, "Would you have bought it anyway?" She goes, "No, but it was 80% off." It's like, no, it's 20% more expensive than nothing, because you wouldn't have ever bought it. So like, we don't want to sell people that shouldn't be there. So now the marketing has to call out more specifically and repel more specifically to create that avatar that has the biggest impact if they're in person. And that's exciting. And I know you guys are doing a really good job of that because you're so keen to the data points. That's where the data really matters and comes to place. But again, that live event can stimulate more people to want to attend the virtual. And then on the virtual, they can see more of how the live event is different. So then the future live event gets sold from the present virtual event.
Exactly right. I think you're touching on a whole series of different things, which we're going to be sharing actually in the upcoming masterclass around the Octalysis, which is Yu-Kai Chow's gamification model, where when you talk about things like scarcity, right, or you're talking about things like basically social influence or empowerment, it's super interesting that these are exactly how most of us now are guided to be thinking, just based on how social media and gamification already has got us basically being triggered by all sorts of different things out there without even being aware of it, right? I want to just share with everyone that these 11 commandments that are here, they basically, you can get them. There's an ebook you can download. The links are in the slides, so we're going to do that as well, because I really, really just love the way that, Jason's bringing timeless principles together, which don't change no matter how much technology is changing. Humans remain the same, right? And our base habits of who we are at also changes, and we're all gravitating. Like when we talk about this one here, the more I let you settle, the less better off either of us are. The more I empower you, the more I empower myself. There's a whole aspect here about care. As that saying goes, people don't care what you think until they think that you care, right? Until they actually can see it's like, oh, this person actually is out for my best well-being. And that takes time for them to realize that we're not just there to sell something, but we're actually there to really help them solve a problem. And if we're not doing that, then we're basically missing out on our mission in life, right? I'd love for you to just share any final words, because I'm about to bring Michelle on to go through one of the things you mentioned, which is acknowledgement, right? We have our awards that Michelle's going to be running through. We do this every month as well on those that are actually achieving great things and contributing to the community. But from that point of view of those out there that might be at the moment just be thinking about, how do I make money? How do I grow my business? The importance of reciprocity and everything you're talking about, which is you got to really be thinking, do you care enough about your customer that you'd even do it for free? Like you wake up in the morning and go, how do I actually really help them without there having to be a monetary return immediately? And only then does the money actually start showing up, right? Like, can you speak to that for a moment? Because I know there's a really important spiritual side to everything that you do as well.
Yeah, it's there's 4 quadrants of behavior modification, essentially, right? There's the positive and the negative, and then there's the reward or the punishment. And punishment in this regard isn't meant in the sense that most of us think it is. It's just something that would deter the behavior, something that would either reward the behavior or deter the behavior. And so you want to use all of those if you possibly can. If we can stay purely positive, reward-based, R+, as they call it in the dog training world, then that would be fantastic. But if we can't use that quadrant, we have to use all of the quadrants. And what I'm seeing, Roger, unfortunately, and I love the concept of your book, a short-term win is where you divide two people against each other, and then you have an us versus them mentality. And then the society is built on who we hate. So you're literally building a society out of hatred. And hate as an energetic force is so damn strong in the short term. It never lasts. But yeah, you can go to a top of the market very quickly that way. That is focusing on a pain extremely in depth and then leveraging that. Or you can go with love, which is slower to burn at first, takes longer, but it has the longevity. Okay. And that's the thing that will last. That is the thing that will reproduce. That is the thing that will grow. Eventually, it is the thing that will outlive you. And that's where we have to have that center of, is we have to find people that are in massive pain. And instead of using that pain and that anger to get them to do something, we got to figure out how to churn that pain into love, that hatred into love. So the hatred of self, this is, in some aspects, this is what limits our customers. There's some part of themselves that they hate and they're at war with it. And we got to somehow churn that into getting them to be in love with something else that transcends that hate. And this is how I think when I think about my markets. But what's going to do that? I got to meet them where they're at. I got to go down to where they are. So many businesses are lost or never even started, Roger, because we want everybody to come to us. We want the whole world to change and meet us where we're at. But the best way to serve somebody else is to go to where they're at. You take the burden of the responsibility on, not put it on their shoulders. And that's how you have to find the market. So you have to say, who can I find somebody right now that is marginalized, that is compromised, that has been stepped on, that has been abused, that has been taken advantage of? And how do I instead show them that there is somebody else out there that won't do it that way, that has a different approach? And they're going to be the hardest nuts to crack, like we talked about earlier, because they're going to be cynical. They're going to think that you're a scam artist like every other scam artist they've encountered. They're going to be jaded because they think that you're going to come there and exploit them just like they have a pattern of being exploited in the past. And so they will be initially more challenging for you, but they will be also, they'll still listen to you because they're desperate. The most desperate people make the best customers because they'll try anything, even stuff that doesn't make sense and is harmful to them. And so you don't obviously give them the poison, you give them the cure. But what you want to do is find those people that are desperate and are hurting and are full of pain. And you got to take that and absorb that. So you have to be strong for them. But if you can show them that you're going to be there for them. I always think of this quote from Mother Teresa, this story. It goes like this. She was going out there trying to get some money and begging for money. And she put her hand out to somebody and they spit in it. And she goes, good, that's for me. Now, what are you going to do for my people? And she put her other hand out. And that's kind of my attitude in this business, in this marketplace, is who can I help that needs help that won't get it otherwise? And then it takes the burden off of me. It's not like I need to get up this morning. I need to work hard. I need to implement. I need to quit procrastinating. All my problems go aside when I focus on other people's problems. And then it's just a matter of, can I usefully solve them? The good news about people that I just described is if they can tell that you care, you have almost a never-ending amount of attempts in which you can get that win for them. You could try the first thing, the second thing, the third thing, the fourth thing, the fifth thing, the sixth thing, and it won't work. And they'll still keep coming back because they got no better prospects. And then that seventh thing you figure out, which doesn't make sense. If it made sense, somebody smarter than you would have already figured it out. That's the thing that makes you a millionaire because nobody else goes that deep. So it's a lot harder at the beginning and it's a lot easier at the end. You're climbing up a hill that's really steep at first to walk down the downslope that goes on forever. And that's what I really urge and inspire people to go look at. And man, these markets, Roger, they can start with 100 people, 500 people, 1,000 people. You can make millions of in an audience where there's only 1,000 people.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And everything you were saying there around this whole switch from hate to love. That's one of my favorite quotes, actually, from Mother Teresa. I found the paradox that if you love until it hurts, there can be no more love, there can be no more hurt, only more love, right? Like that whole thing about basically where this becomes the salvation of being an entrepreneur itself, right? That you actually can be raising consciousness as you go. I want to say a big thank you, Jason, for everything you're sharing. I think it's fantastic. I think that everyone should be thinking this same way. It's as much about how we're being as it is about kind of what strategies we have or how we're growing our business as well. And with that, I'm going to bring on board Michelle here, who is going to be going through all of the awards that we have coming up, and look forward to catching up again in the future, Jason. Thank you very much.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you, Roger.
So welcome everybody. Always good to see you all in our GEM presentation for the month of November. And thank you so much to Roger and Jason. That was very informative, and I hope that it helps all of you to take your thinking to the next level. So we just came back from Bali, and guess what? We're going to be in London in 2 weeks. So do come and join us, and let me share my screen. So the awards for this month. We run an awards every month for all of our community, our partners, and our customers within the metaverse. And this is definitely to engage in recognition and to, also reward the contributions that our clients are making. So we have monthly winners and quarterly winners. The nominations, I want to congratulate everybody. So this month for November, we have Narelle, Ruby, Angie, and Anne. So for Narelle, she's the founder of Evolution Creative Arts Therapies. And the reason I am nominating Narelle is she was with us in Bali and she worked on therapy dynamics. And it was, the way she put everything together and finally put it down into a plan and presented it out. And she was presenting on stage through one of the competitions. And it's really about this transformation in therapy and igniting her clients' joy and spark that comes through. And she wants to drive this particular business to a solid green level in collaboration with Wealth Dynamics through the next 2 years. So she's joined us ahead of the World Game as one of our partners that is wanting to collaborate and go further with this. So she's got amazing energy. I love the way she uses colors in everything that she does. She has great power, and I'm recognizing her because she's super, super committed, and she's a dedicated partner and has been so for many, many years. The next person is Ruby. Ruby is the founder of the College for Actualizing Human Potential. Ruby's been in our community for many, many moons. She first joined Crystal Circle, I think, in 2014, 2015, and she didn't enjoy the program so much. But then she came back during COVID, and she started working on her enterprise. She upgraded to level 2 partner. And ultimately, just recently, she's extended this and is participating also in the World Game. And I'm really recognizing her for her tenacity, her dedication and commitment in driving change and making a difference in the later years of her life. When I spoke to the other day, it was really around, I'm just going to be here for another 10 years, Michelle, so I'd better make it the best ones. And that's everything that she does always. And she always tries to make it better. And even in her 70s, she is working on stuff like that. So I really wanted to recognize her for that. Okay, next is Angie. Angie is the founder of Magic Sparks, Education Angels, and Genius School. She's actually one of our acquisition partners. The reason I'm recognizing her is because you guys can read her story, and I think she's been around for a long time. But she's been to Wealth Dynamics Masters now 15 times, and it's one of the longest attending people. This year, she came as a mentor, and I am actually recognizing her for being one of the superb mentors at Masters this year, for showing up with a caring, loving, and supporting energy to help our delegates to lift their thinking and to be the best versions of themselves. So thank you, Angie, very, very much. And last but not least is Anne. Anne is a mentor extraordinaire. Really, also in this space, he's done so many amazing things in the last 2 years since I've known him. Amazing him is he brought 15 members of his tribe to Wealth Dynamics Masters, most amazing community and people. And he also was one of our brilliant mentors. So I'm recognizing him for being calm, bringing insight and high-level mentoring and brilliance to our delegates. He was also a fabulous MC at the end, and we only discovered that right on the last day. So I wanted to just say thank you so much, Anne. All right. And the winner this month is Narelle. So congratulations, Narelle. Our team will be in contact with regards to the prizes. And yes, We are very, very excited to see you guys in London in 2 weeks. So thank you so much for joining us today. And if you do need tickets, just drop the message to the team. They'll come back and they'll let you know where it is, but they'll drop the page in too. So I hope to see you all in London very, very soon. Thank you so much. Bye.